Hello there folks, welcome to A Chap Reviews. My name is Ash and I am your host on this journey through movie reviews, book reviews and other forms of entertainment that I think you're going to enjoy. Remember, I come at these things through the perspective of a middle-aged British man, so maybe a little different to some of the other reviewers that you may encounter. Now, last night I found myself at the cinema watching an advanced screening of Life of Chuck. Now this is unusual because this movie was released in the States earlier in the year, but has yet to be released here in the UK. And the story stems from a short story written by Stephen King a while ago. And this movie was very ably put together by director Mike Flanagan. Now, when I got to the cinema last night, not knowing at all what this movie was all about, I knew it was going to be interesting straight away because we discover we are getting the story in a reverse chronological order because of the titles on the screen. We discover we're getting Act 3 first. Now throughout the story we do get the services of a narrator who keeps us on track with the story, and that's useful actually because the story has got quite some wiggling to get through, and so we're getting Act 3 first, the end of the story. And Act 3 is a really interesting platform for what comes later, because we first meet Chiwetel Ejiofor, who's acting as a school teacher in a high school in America, and through his observations of the world around him, we discover that the world is coming to its end. The internet has failed. There are natural disasters taking place all over the world, and everybody on the planet is of the realization that this is the end of days and society is breaking down. People are walking through the streets in depression and reconnecting with old friends and putting to bed old arguments. And in this sense, the school teacher goes to reconnect with his ex-wife, played by Karen Gillan. Funny enough, most of the actors in this are British, playing American roles. So we are taking all of your jobs in North America. And he reconnects with his ex-wife, who is a nurse, and they sort of rebond. And through this period of him observing the world around him, meeting other characters who pop up in the preceding two acts, or forthcoming two acts, we understand kind of what's going on in this world. It's drawn to its conclusion. But all throughout it, there are this weird references to Chuck. This billboards and adverts on the television and even skywriting. You know, thanks Chuck for 39 years. And this is the Chuck, of course, that the film is named after. And an image of Tom Hiddleston, the actor playing Chuck. But we know not who Chuck is. He doesn't appear in Act 3 at all. All we know is that the world is coming to an end, and eventually the school teacher and his ex-wife sit in the garden as they see the stars disappearing from the sky, and we realize this is the end of the universe as it's known to us. And then we see Chuck actually sort of break to another scene, and Chuck is lying in bed dying with his family gathered around him, and you know, his wife says, "Thank you Chuck for 39 good years." And we're starting to get an idea that there's an element of the supernatural going on here somewhere. But then we leave that and we move into Act 2, the middle act. And this is where for the first time we actually get to meet Chuck. Now Chuck, Tom Hiddleston, is an accountant, and he's all dressed in a business suit. He's walking down the street, we're told by the narrator. He's in town attending a banking conference, and he's just out for a walk. He skipped out of a lecture. And as he walks down the street, he comes across a female drummer who's busking in the street. She sees Chuck walking towards her, somewhat incongruous to his surroundings as a well-dressed man with a briefcase, so she starts drumming as if to announce him. And for some reason, Chuck sees this, hears this, and has this feeling. He puts his briefcase down and he does the most amazing dance act in front of the drummer. People stop, amazed by the dancing being displayed. A female onlooker, who we learn a little bit about, she's walking down the street having just been dumped by her boyfriend. She sort of wiggles to the rhythm. He invites her to dance, and they share this amazing public spontaneous dance in which the crowd are enraptured by their enthusiasm and joy of dancing, as is of course the drummer, who really gets into it, and they perform this wonderful spontaneous dance. And when they finish, the crowds are clapping, and clearly they are basking in this wonderful moment of spontaneity. And then we see them sat with the drummer, having a moment to talk about the events of the day. And the drummer says, well, why did you stop and do that? It doesn't look like something you would do. And Chuck is at odds really to answer. And he simply says, well, I think the universe made it so that my whole life made it so that I was here today at this moment, at this time. And that is what I was meant to do. Of course, we don't understand where this thought process comes from. All we know is that this was the Chuck that we just saw dying in his bed at the end of Act 1, at the end of days, and this is an earlier phase of Chuck. We are told that he suffers a headache, that he doesn't particularly, the narrator tells us this, that he doesn't have a particularly long amount of time left to live, unbeknown to him, because he has a brain tumour. But, this was his moment in the sun of magnificent dancing. Now, Act 1 for us is the end, actually, rather than the beginning of the story. And this is where we meet young Chuck, who is quite young at the time, under 5 by the look of him, and we learn that his life is one of tragedy from the beginning. We already know that he dies rather young, but as a young child we learn that his parents, his mother pregnant with his future unyet born sister, was killed in a car accident, and therefore he has to be raised by his paternal grandparents. His grandfather, in fact, played by Mark Hamill. And he is brought up rather in this old Victorian house, which has a cupola, a sort of circular room in the roof, which he's not allowed to go into. And his grandfather tells him that the house, a Victorian property, this room has supernatural qualities in which ghosts reside, and he's forbidden ever to go there. And that's all we kind of know about it at this point. Then Chuck makes his way through life as a young boy. He goes to school. His grandfather encourages him to be good at maths, to become an accountant like he was, which of course we know that he does become in the future. But one of the things that we learn is that his love of dancing comes from his grandmother, who used to jig around the kitchen with him when she was doing cooking at home. And then because of that, when he was at school, when school ran an after-class dance club, he joined. And it turned out that he was the best boy dancer in the school, gets to dance with all the girls, and he performs with one of his female contemporaries from dance class in the fall festival, a school sort of prom, in which he dances to his heart's content in front of all his schoolmates, and is something of a hero in front of everybody else, and another perfect moment in his life. But sadly, his life seems to be one which is dogged with grief from the beginning, because his grandmother dies unexpectedly whilst out shopping, and then when he's only about 17 years of age, his grandfather succumbs to a heart attack, having been quite a heavy drinker and quite a maudlin fellow in his life. So young Chuck now finds himself living alone in this house for a little while before his other grandparents come to look after him. And he decides to go up into the forbidden room in the attic, opens the lock, goes into the room, and it's discovered to be empty. Until he turns around and he sees an apparition of his future self dying in a hospital bed. Of course, we've seen this in Act 3. We know it's him. We know this is the end of his life. And we discover that the supernatural quality of this room is that it shows you the future deaths of people that maybe you, yourself, and others know. And your own death, of course, in this case. And of course, this can be destructive for the individual. But Chuck looks at the apparition of himself dying, unable to determine what age he is, of course, in his death. And he makes a decision there and then. He's not going to let this spoil his life. He decides that this will just be a jumping off point for his future. And he decides that all of the world is within him to enjoy. The universe resides within him. And that's kind of the storyline. So the people that we see at the beginning, for whom the universe is coming to an end, these are the people who exist within Chuck, because they're people he have met, people who he has encountered, people who form part of his life. And when he dies, of course, the universe in which they are his memories, they also die. It's a fantastic story, really. And whilst I sat there, it took me on a bit of an emotional roller coaster. From one high to another low and back, up and down again. It's a story which incorporates a lot of sadness, a lot of grief, a lot of happiness, and a lot of resilience to go on and go forward. Even though life sends you lemons, Chuck decided to make lemonade out of them rather than let them poison him with their acid. And for that reason, I would highly recommend this story. It's told in an unusual way, in a reverse chronology. And I've told you much of the story there, but there's enough there for you to still seek great enjoyment through going to watch it yourself. I've left quite a bit out, which is still worth you going to see. I'm going to give this a rating of 4 bowler hats out of 5. But really, it's an unusual and interesting way of telling a story which you don't come across that often. Now, I'm grateful for the fact that I would never have gone to see this if my wife and son weren't out playing golf. It's not the sort of film I would typically have gone to see. I'm so glad I did, because it brought me so many emotions, so many thoughts, so many feelings. And a movie which can move you and make you feel something is one worth savouring and enjoying. So on that basis, I'm definitely going to recommend it to you. Life of Chuck is certainly a high point in the movies that I've seen this year so far, and I think you will also enjoy it. So there we go. Hope you've enjoyed it. Don't forget to like and subscribe for future movie reviews from me. Until then, take care, and I'll see you soon.